welcome, guys. I'm sure you guys are really excited about everybody we picked, like Coach Marrone and I are. Right, D-Rock? And we went on this journey and we looked for guys that we felt like would fit our team, not only athletically, but we got two tremendous athletes, guys that are really fit the mold of what we look for in corners. Guys, CJ can cover. He can take a team's. We believe he can take a team's number one receiver because of his athleticism and his speed. And he's a great kid. He's all about football, or I should say, great young man. And same with Mr. Chason. He is a tremendous, tremendous team guy. 6'3", 265 pounds. We feel like he can bring a presence on the edge. He can set the edge as a very good run defender. You see him against big SEC tackles, locking guys out. We'll play him probably in a 2-point stance, and then he'll be our rusher opposite of Josh and Yannick, and we'll go from there.
All right, Coach, you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, I just think as a coach, you go through the draft and, the situation we're in this year with, obviously the virus and not being able to go out, so you rely on a lot of things. And, so a lot of our assistant coaches spoke to the coaches on, both staffs at LSU and Florida. I personally spoke to assistants on both staffs, and obviously Coach Mullen and Coach Ogeron, who, I have a relationship with. Obviously, Coach Ogeron and I worked together. Dan was a GA at Syracuse a long time ago when Coach Pasqualoni was there. So we, you have that connection that way. I think as a coach, you feel really comfortable. I mean, you can see the athlete and you can see what they do on the field, and you love it, with the skills that they have. But to talk to their coaches and to find out, what type of people they are, what motivates them, how they are in the locker room, I couldn't have been, happier about where we are right now. Our team's excited. I talked to a couple players on our team, excited about the direction, that we're in. They're excited about their new teammates. I think that's important. Who we're bringing in. We still have that responsibility, trying to create this locker room of, obviously we're going to have a young football team, but I feel that these two guys are going to be, great contributors for us.
All right, thank you, Coach. The first two questions, we're going to start with Mark Long and then go to Gene Fournette. So, Mark, just wait 1 second for yourself to come off mute. All right, good to go.
Yeah, for Doug, how big is this for you guys from a character standpoint and a locker room standpoint? These two guys both are clean players from a off the field issue.
Yeah. I think, Mark, I want to make sure that is it big? Absolutely. Is this something that we stressed? Yes. But we were able to do that without sacrificing the talent or potential. So, I just want to make sure that we felt that, when I say you hit on everything, these guys are talented, they have great potential to play in this league. They obviously have, good production, and we feel that they're going to come here and do a great job. And then the character and the way they're going to be with their teammates. So, I really feel like, we've hit a home run with those two. And I feel like our players, Juwan Taylor, obviously, he knows CJ, so that was a big thing for me. I can't speak for scouts, coaches, or anything else about, their relationship, and they had been teammates and what type of teammate, that CJ is. It was great to hear, from Juwan. DJ Chark, hey, with Kayvon, what type of person, what kind of teammate is going to be a coach? You're going to, so there's a little bit of players in our locker room that know these players. And that's important for me, to get a sense of, hey, are these guys going to fit? Are they what we're looking for? They understand the challenges that we have as a team. How are they going to be there? So I was very comfortable with that. And I think we hit on everything, like you said.
And then Dave, can you just, this is the fourth straight year you've taken two guys from the SEC. Obviously, they had, I think they had 15 guys, 15 of the 32 were SEC guys. How much has that paid dividends for you guys, and how much is that big for you guys right now?
Well, I don't necessarily look at it just because they're in the SEC, but they play at a high level at one of the highest, best conferences in the league. And when you look at Kayvon and who he goes against at offensive tackle, and the two guys in Georgia that went in the first round, and how he fared against them, and the Oklahoma game, the LSU game, or the Oklahoma game, and he's played well throughout the whole year. And the same with CJ. I mean, the receivers that he's gone against in the SEC are second to none in this college football this year. So both those guys have gone against the best competition and have fared very well. On top of their physical skill set, which is very unique in terms of their size, their speed, their athleticism, and their play temperament. They're all about football. They're all about team, and we look forward to having both those guys.
Thanks, Mark. We're gonna go over to Gene and then D-Rock. So 1 second, Gene. Okay, you're off mute. Go ahead, Gene.
First one is for Doug. Doug, a little bit of play off of what Mark was asking about. You talked about a couple of weeks ago about wanting this season to be not about a lot of drama. And when you look at these two players that you've drafted tonight, there's a little, I don't know if there's some irony there, but CJ plays the position that Jalen played, and in Clavon's case, you could certainly make the argument that he could eventually be a replacement for Yannick if for any reason things don't work out with you two, with his contract. Could you talk a little bit about that factor? Because these guys do see, these guys are like captain guys, they're leader guys. They're known for more than just certainly their talent and their potential.
Sure, Gene, and I appreciate it. I think the one thing that's clear is that we're not looking at saying comparing CJ Henderson to any player that we have, whether it be Jalen or it would be AJ Boye, or comparing Kayvon to anyone on our team, or anyone that is like Calais or someone that's not around. I don't think it's fair to them. But what I will say is that we lost players at those positions. So when you look at what we were looking for, we were fortunate, in my opinion, that sometimes when you get in there as a coach, and I'm talking to Dave, well, hey, what are we going to do at the secondary, or what are we going to do to create the pass rush that we need, to be successful against the teams that we need, and you start looking, and then all of a sudden you have these guys that fill in from a talent standpoint. And that's the one thing I don't want, these two players to be overlooked from a situation of, well, you know what, Jacksonville went ahead and they took two guys that are really great guys, but they may not be untalented. We feel like we've gotten great talent, guys that can produce at positions that we needed, but we did not have to go and take them. They were the highest rated players on our board when we were going to go and pick. We even went into it, and I don't know how much Dave wants to talk about this, is that we went into it thinking that neither of those players might not be there when we pick. So we felt very fortunate, obviously with CJ, and then we really didn't think Kayvon would be there. And then when a couple of picks went before, and we realized that, hey, we might have a chance to be able to get him, was outstanding. So I'm excited about that. And like I said before, I'm not going to lie and say it wasn't important. We're going to have a young team. Everyone knows that. I'm excited about that. I think people, tend to think that, you want veteran players, and hey, there's a lot of great veteran players, but, these young players that are going to come in that have relationship with players on our team, and that the players on our team are potential team leaders, I think that's a home run. That's a great thing for us.
And follow up for Dave. Dave, when you were looking at the board at number 9 with CJ, Doug talked about, you often hear coaches say, well, yeah, he was the number 1 player on our board. But how much of a concern was it that, him and Ngakoue were considered the first tier cornerbacks, and you didn't want to have to go to a second tier if you couldn't pull the trigger with CJ at 9?
Well, we looked at it, and what we looked at is at 9 and at 20, and and who do we feel comfortable taking at 9 if we didn't take CJ, and then who would be there at 20. And we felt like there could be some corners at 20 that we liked, but didn't like as much as CJ, obviously. And then, you heard different takes across the league of some teams liking CJ as the best corner in the draft. And we certainly felt like that he has the upside to be that eventually in time. And then when you look at 42, where we're picking the second round, we felt like those guys were gone. And sure enough, as you saw the little run here and the late at the end of the first round, all the guys we were looking at 42 were pretty much gone. So we're happy to get CJ, and then to add a pass rusher at 20. Historically, pass rushers, if you feel like they can play to run, play to pass, and Kayvon's plays also cover too. This is a guy that's really multifaceted, and we can play in some 3-4 looks, obviously, with Josh Allen and him, and I think offers a bunch of versatility on our defense with those two guys and Yannick.
Follow up: was there a consideration for an offensive tackle at 9? Because the 3 of the top 4 were still on the board at the time.
3 of who's top 4?
Well, I guess what is generally accepted as the top 4 offensive tackles.
No, I think the one that we may have considered was probably gone at that time. So
they were off the Gene Fournette big board. All right, we're gonna jump over to D-Rock and then John Reed. D-Rock, 1 second to come off mute. Ready to roll. Go ahead.
Hey, Dave, were you tempted at all at 9 to take a receiver because they were all there? You could have had your pick. And did that kind of get in your mind at all, or no?
Yeah, we liked some receivers there. Obviously, if CJ was gone, we kicked around of possibly Kayvon being that pick at 9, but also a receiver or 2 would have came in play if he was gone. So we just kind of followed our board and followed the best player that we felt was available at a position of need. And we know that this is, we've heard for the last year that this is the deepest receiver draft. And we know that there's going to be receivers all across the board as the draft goes on.
For Doug, what do you like about Chaison's versatility? I mean, you have him and then you have Allen that can kind of do some of the same things. Does that allow you to kind of tweak a lot of things that you do on defense and maybe not be as rigid as you might have been before?
Rigid.
Well, the thing about Chaisson that, Kayvon that I really love is that, obviously he can play that Sam backup position and base downs, and he can rush the quarterback. And he can rush the quarterback from a 2-point stance, and you can argue whether he's a better rusher at a 3-point stance. The one thing that I see is a really good future. I see a guy that's a speed guy. Everyone knows that the best pass rush comes in waves. So we've got 3 guys that can rush the passer now. We got 3 guys that can play the zone read stuff. When they're trying to really put the pressure on those defensive ends. Obviously, Kayvon's, he can play special teams for us too. I mean, there's so much he can contribute because of his, his height, weight, and speed and what he can do. But make no mistake about it. I looked at him and, people were talking about, well, sacks or, whatever it may be. And I'm like, the one thing about this guy right here is that, he has speed to speed. He has an unbelievable spin move. I think the speed to power is going to come and become better. And I think once that comes, he can be a dominant rusher in this league. And the one thing I do think is that when you watch the film in our league, I think that he can get a lot of penalties, meaning that he is, quick and fast, and he gets on the edge of those guys. So, we think he's going to be a really, really productive player for us.
Thank you, D-Rock. We're going to jump over to John Reed and then to Hayes. Go ahead, John.
This is for Dave. Do you feel that it was a little overstated about Henderson's tackling ability, and kind of what sold you the most? Was it his speed, or it just press coverage, and also do you think that he can also be a punt and kickoff returner because of his speed? I mean, you see multi-dimensional player there?
Well, I'm sure with his speed, he could do that. I think for us, if he's going to be corner number 1 or corner number 2, we probably won't use him in that facet. As far as his tackling goes, I think it was good at the college level. Obviously, those guys have room to grow, but his coverage ability far outweighed any deficiency that he may or may not have had as a tackler.
Do you feel that at defensive tackle, if it is still a need, that it's deep enough that you could find something on day 2 or 3?
Yeah, if we felt like it was a need, I'm sure we could.
And for Doug, just what sold you the most on CJ Henderson? As far as I know the attitude is great, but from a field perspective, the fact that you could put him on a number 1 receiver even if he's young.
That's it. Stop.
Uh-huh.
You answered the question. That's exactly how I feel, John. I really feel like you have someone that you could put on a 1 receiver. And the reason why I believe that is because CJ has speed. So sometimes these number 1 receivers are, maybe smaller, fast guys. CJ is also big. He's also physical in press. So you can put him on, the bigger, stronger receivers. So I felt that he's a great fit, of a guy that can truly be a number 1 corner and take guys out of the game and not say, because sometimes you get these corners that may be really big and strong, where they get these little, fast guys that, sometimes they don't want to press them, but CJ is big and strong, and he could run, and he has a ton of range, and he has a ton of makeup speed, and he has a ton of burst. So, you see these things when you watch the tape and you realize to yourself, you say, okay, here's this player, and I'm talking to Washer and I'm talking to Tim Walton, we're like, okay, here's this guy, and here are all these skills, and this guy wants to be a great player, and he's still going to develop. It's not like, anyone that we're bringing in is ready made, So, at the end of the day, we're looking at it, and not to go against anyone else that went before him, or maybe anyone else that's been here before, but we feel that he has the potential to be a true, number 1.
Doug, Spike Lee is the number 1 Knicks fan.
There you go. Hey.
Now this has to be first. This is Stewart the first person in a press conference to solve a Rubik's Cube.
I was going to say, we need to get him a question. Somebody ask him a question.
I feel insulted. It's like a player come in during a meeting using an iPhone.
All right, well, let's go to Hayes next, and then we'll go to Stewart's boss, and we'll see how he feels. So we'll go to Hayes.
Yeah, good seeing you, gentlemen. I want to get both your feelings on this. What was the moment that stood out for you guys the most when you watched CJ and you watched Caleb on, in terms of the moment where you really started to develop a great admiration for them as players? Was there a specific play or a game that stands out that really hammered it home for you?
Dave or me first?
Dave first.
Well, for me, it's the body of work, and the body of work in those 2 guys, and the level of competition they played in, the receivers that CJ has had to go against, and Mark Long can attest to this, and a lot of Alabama, LSU. I mean, tremendous receivers, and for me, his coverage ability and his ability to man up and really shut guys down, for me, is come in and out of breaks and watch him stay in a receiver's hip pocket, and some of the best receivers in college football. As far as Mr. Chason goes, it was more of how much better he got as the year went on, and how he played in those last 4 or 5 games, and when it really mattered. And I really felt like he's just scratching the surface. And this is a guy with good length, with great athleticism, and really watching him against Georgia and later in the year against Clemson, really felt like that he really started to come on.
Great. And for you, Doug, were there plays or moments in games where your admiration for these guys really kind of jumped out?
Well, for me, and I think everyone watches film or writes up prospects, differently. So I can't speak for anyone else, but I like to throw away the best game, throw out the worst game, and then try to see, where this player is. I also like to look at games from the beginning and in the middle of the season, the end of the season, to see the progress that the player has made, knowing that, hey, early on, there may be some things that you make mistakes about, but have you shown the ability, to learn from those mistakes and get better? And, I've seen both players develop along the season as they went along, whether it's, technique or what they wanted to do differently or playing different, different areas of what they wanted to do, or their hands developing, or their press technique developing. Those are the things I looked at. And I think, when you're talking about, taking players early, you're going to talk about, hey, listen, you're going to talk about production, and you're going to talk about, hey, has CJ been able to go out and shut receivers down, which he's done, at a consistent level? Hey, is Kayvon going to be able to beat, offensive tackles at a consistent level? And that's what you got to study, because sometimes numbers don't always tell the truth. And you look how many times, like Kayvon, for example, how many times he's winning is not resulting because the quarterbacks are getting rid of the ball. For me, I'm looking at a guy that's winning. And I think that, both those players, the irony of it is that, hey, if CJ can cover the number one receiver and Kayvon can rush and beat that guy and make that quarterback hold that ball for 1 second, that can be a pretty good combination for those two guys.
Thank you, Hayes. We'll go over to Brent and then John Shipley. Go ahead, Brent.
I just kicked Weber off the Zoom call. So you're welcome.
This is the latest interview I've ever done in my life. I just want to say that.
It's almost bedtime, Coach. We're almost there.
Almost done. Dave,
I go to bed at 9:30 every night. Here I am.
You don't have a meeting till 1, Dave said. Dave, this is for you. How about the virtual draft? How did it go overall? How was the communication? And were you a little surprised there wasn't a little more wheeling and dealing? Do you think that had a role to play in kind of the situation you're all in?
I would say the virtual draft went very smooth. As far as the wheeling and dealing, I think there was, I don't think it had anything to do with it. I really don't. And I felt like there were some, the way the board came off was kind of like how we expected it for the most part. And we, the top 20 players, we thought were going to be the top 20 players. And there was really no surprises in those top 20 players.
Or if I could just jump back in real quick, are you still a little bit nervous about the next couple of days when the window shrinks? I know you brought that up, I think, about a week ago, but now that you've experienced this for a night, you feel more comfortable?
I feel much more comfortable. As a matter of fact, as I was talking and putting picks in, I was looking and we had picks in it by about 6.5 minutes ago, 7 minutes ago. So, and that was with talking to a few teams about trades. So I felt like we should be able to get it done if I need to get it done.
Thanks.
Thanks, Brett. We'll jump over to John Shipley. It looks like we lost Coach for a second. So if you want to keep these questions for Dave, and it might not just be a first second, Coach may have just passed out on us, but if you want to just keep the questions to Dave for now, go ahead, John.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, this was for you anyways, Dave. Just, both at pick number 9 and pick number 20, how much activity was there in terms of other teams wanting to move into your guys' draft slot?
So at pick 9, I was getting a lot of activity before the pick. And then once 8 went off, I felt like teams were maybe trying to trade up for Isaiah Simmons, it seemed like. And then once he went off, that kind of died out. At pick 20, I had one team reach out to me, didn't give me an offer. And then that was about it.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
Good. All right, we're going to do 2 final questions. We're going to do one from Mia and then one from Mike Garafolo. If you guys could just keep it to 1 each, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah.
No problemo. Hello. How we doing, Dave?
Great. How are you?
Doing well. Hey there. Just wondering, I know there's a lot of folks that, seeing you guys go defense, assuming now tomorrow has to be offense. You guys mentioned making sure Gardner has the weapons to succeed this year. So how important is addressing offense tomorrow? And do you feel like there is pressure to do so?
I do not feel like there's pressure to do so. We do feel like Gardner does have weapons. We do have one Pro Bowl receiver. We have a former Pro Bowl tight end that we acquired. We have a young tight end that's going into a second year that we think has a high ceiling. We did have a running back that was 6th in the league from yards from scrimmage last year, and we have a really good slot receiver, and we have 2 other receivers, and Keelan Cole and Chris Conley on the other side. So probably I would say from a skill level position, better than what we had when we went to the AFC Championship game in 17. And if you look at what we were playing with at that point in time. So don't assume anything. Good question, though.
Thank you. Mike G, waiting for you to come off mute. Okay, go ahead.
Who invited you?
Dave, was that?
Who invited you?
He's joining our local media beat.
Jeez.
I made a couple trips down there last year. That gives me a free ticket. You talked about pairing Caleb on with Jan. Makes sense. He's technically, well, he's not under contract, but he's under the tag. Anything changing there? And I know that there was reports today about you and the Raiders. I don't gather that was accurate at all.
No, it wasn't. As far as that goes, I try not to comment too much on the situation. I try to be very pragmatic about it. Truth be told is we exercised a franchise tender. We weren't able to get a trade. Actually weren't even really able to get an offer. So I think his options are very limited at this point in time, and we'll welcome him back with open arms when he's ready to come back. And we look forward to it. Jan, for the people on this call and who have been around him, realize he is a tremendous player, tremendous person. His always been first class in everything he's done here in the locker room and through his time here in the first 4 years of his contract. And obviously he feels like things have not gone the way he wanted. And, he, in some aspects, he may have a point. But we put our best foot forward, not once, but twice. And I think, I hope he sees the light that, Jacksonville is a good spot, and it could, at the end of the day, be his only option.